12th meeting of the January 10th meeting of the St. Tammany Parish Planning Commission. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lombard,
Present.
Ms. Casabon, Mr. De La Houssaye, Mr. Sammons, Ms. Vander, Mr. Willie, Mr. Davis, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Doherty, Mr. Mackey. Chairman, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Would everybody please stand for the invocation by Mr. Sammons and the pledge by Mr. Matthews? Mr. Sammons.
Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together today safely. Please guide, guard, and direct us as we do the parish's business tonight. And please let all the football players get home safely. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the commissioners had an opportunity to look at the December 13 minutes? Are there any corrections or changes?
Motion to approve.
I
Second.
have a motion. I have a second by Mr. Matthews. Please vote on that motion. Motion carries. Staff, any items that are asking to be pulled?
Pulled, yes, MS 1201-001 under minor subdivision, we need to pull that. We also have a couple of tablings, too.
All right, let me see. Commissioners have any items they want to pull? Mr. Matthews?
Yes, the Alpha Industrial Phase 2A
Okay,
and the entering the right-of-way on Ruby Street.
okay. Okay, we're gonna pull item 1, Alpha Industrial Park Phase 2A subdivision, Ward 4, District 5, in the amount of $5,000. It expires February 15th of 2012, and it's in Mr. Gould's district. We're also gonna pull entering the parish right-of-way, Ruby Street, Ward 3, District 2, the amount of $14,000. It expires January 29th of 2012, and it's in Mr. Sharp's district. And there's a motion to pull MS 12-01-001, 189.11 acre tract of land being Lot 7A into lots 7A1, 7A2, and 7A3. Ward 1, District 1, the developer is Allstate Financial, and it's in Mr. Dean's district. I need a motion to pull those.
So moved.
I have a second. Please vote on that motion. Motion carries. Okay, on the consent calendar, I'll need a motion to accept the remaining cases.
Do we need to ask the public if they want to pull any?
I'll ask, but generally they don't pull.
Yeah, I thought we, as a formality, we had to ask.
Anybody in the public would like to pull any case on the agenda, on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll need a motion to approve the consent calendar. Please vote on that motion. Motion carries. Okay, item 1, Alpha Industrial Park Phase 2A subdivision, Ward 4, District 5, in the amount of $5,000, expires February 15th of 2012. The debtor is K.M. Straffer Seaford LLC, and it's in Mr. Gould's district. Any opposition? Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires February 15, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the January 10th, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. The following uncompleted items exist: construction, permanent turnaround. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on July 7th, 2011. The developer or petitioner will be advised that he will be required to conform with all current ordinances when applicable as a condition of this extension. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until the work is satisfactorily accomplished. Basically, this is where they have a temporary turnaround because they plan on extending the road in the future.
So there's no really intention to complete this turnaround?
No.
Okay.
Any comments from the public? Want to make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
I have a second. Please vote on that motion.
Why do we pull this one again?
He just wanted the explanation of why they wasn't gonna construct the turnaround.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
because they're gonna extend the road, and they didn't say it in the report. Motion carries. Second item, entering the parish right-of-way, Ruby Street, Ward 3, District 2, in the amount of $14,000, expires January 29th of 2012. The debtor is Covington Place Cottages LLC, and it's in Mr. Sharp's district. Any opposition? Staff?
The above referenced performance obligation expires January 29th, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the January 10th, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been accomplished. The following uncompleted items exist. Construct sewer and water lines in accordance with approved plans, furnish as-built drawings, repair 12th Street where damaged. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on the November 10th, 2009, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer or petitioner will be advised that he will be required to conform with all current ordinances where applicable. As a condition of this extension, therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until the work is satisfactorily accomplished. Basically, in this case, a sewer line under a road isn't at the right grade, and they have to correct it.
And this is since November 10, 2009? Is that correct?
I don't know how long the sewer line's been there, but that's how long the performance obligation's been
I know it was
around.
there last year, because when we went out and looked at it with the pile of mud that was up there, the road was in and the sewer lines were in and all at that time.
But we've got to repair the 12th Street, they've damaged it evidently. And I mean, what do? Do we just let them go on and on and on? I mean, do we have any recourse? I mean, what's,
The sewer company won't accept the sewer line until they fix it, so they can't really do anything on the road until they fix it. They're
The drawings have
basically
been
shut down,
signed and
so that'll
everything.
encourage them to eventually.
I mean,
Are they selling
can we do
property?
anything to get them to finish this project, or what? I mean, it's been since 2009, it appears. Let's, I mean, what do we do?
Would
Well,
the-
no, I guess your only other alternative would be to call the bond, but the trouble with that'd leave us with the burden of doing it, and since it's a sewer, the problem is mainly a sewer line that's not being used by anybody, I don't see why
Well,
we
we
need
also
it.
have a damaged street. I mean,
They're not selling
why
lots
do
out
we
there?
bother looking at these if there's nothing we can do if they don't finish them?
Well, the repair is gonna be when they repair the sewer line, they're gonna damage the road, and they're gonna have to patch it. They tried to do a jack and bore and couldn't get the sewer line at the right grade.
It just seems like we're,
But if we take that as the 130,000, is that, since 2009, as things have gone up, if we call this and we use it, would we end up spending more money?
I don't know.
This is the
That's
one-
the thing, if we call them,
This is the one
so
above
we.
it, Martha, the one for
Oh, I'm
14,000.
sorry, it's on the other
It's
one.
14,000.
But if we did, call it, then that's why we end up, it's let them, whether, I mean, they can't sell anything, it's not finished, so
Well, I don't
it's
know
money.
that. I don't know that. That's what was my next question.
Oh, what, had they
Did the parish
finished?
council approve it also, the plat, did we sign the drawings or the plat signed and recorded?
Well, even if the plat's signed, they can't
can't.
utilize the sewer
Uh-uh.
line until the sewer line's corrected. So
That
without a
part's
sewer
fine.
line, there's not much they can do out there.
I mean, they could sell
Well,
it, but they
you-
can't.
Do you know definitely that the sewer line's not being used?
Yeah, the sewer company would not accept the sewer line because it's not set right. It's the wrong grade under the road, and they refused acceptance of it. So without a sewer company to operate the sewer line,
They can't
they can't
sell.
finish the permit out. If they tried to build something, they'd never get occupancy because they wouldn't have sewer for it.
but we don't see anything wrong with this process?
Well, there's something wrong with it. I'm just trying to figure out how to
Yeah,
correct it.
I don't know, but I mean, we can't call a performance obligation because
No,
there's
no,
not
we-
enough
we
money.
can- We can call it.
No, I'm saying we can't call it because there's not enough money. If there'd be enough money to finish the project, we could call it. But it doesn't make sense to call a performance obligation because there's not enough money. So we just let this go and go and go and go.
No, I think
There's
this is
something
legal
wrong with the
recommendation.
process here. At least it looks like that to me.
I'll let legal answer it, but I think that's
Well,
illegal.
there's potentially other recourse that can be taken. The real question is,
how quickly something can be done, and the answer to that is probably not too quickly. Anytime you got to resort to the legal process, it doesn't happen any too quickly. You could call a performance obligation. That's one way to do it. The other way, and in conjunction with that, there's a potential that you could seek a mandatory injunction asking the court to order them to repair the street, put it back like it was, fix the sewer line, and those things. That is going to be an ordinary process in court, which means it doesn't move as a summary proceeding, so it is going to be a slow process. But those are basically the only two options that are available. So, you know, it can be explored. The administration could consider whether or not it wants to call the performance obligation and undertake the task of fixing it to see if they can do it for the price, for the amount of that. And in conjunction with that, determine whether or not the parish council would consider filing a lawsuit to force them to do that.
Well, our hands appear to be tied.
To some degree.
And that seems to be wrong. And if, it will take a long time to do a lawsuit, but if we keep extending this 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, pretty soon, the lawsuit would have been the quick way to go. I mean, you know, there just seems to be something wrong with the process that puts us in the position that we really only as a practical matter can do anything but keep extending it.
Well, you know, there's other things that perhaps the council could take a look at in terms of amending our ordinance and our process, if you will. But that doesn't answer the immediate question. And the immediate question is, how do you resolve this case? And the answer to that is, one, call a performance obligation. And number two, potentially determine whether or not the parish wants to pursue legal action to force them to do something.
Well,
That's the only two options.
My question really is, I guess, to promote somebody looking at this and seeing why we are putting ourselves in this position, which I think is not a good position for the parish to be in. In this particular case, we probably can't do much of anything in this particular case. But it's in all these cases that come before us like this. We really can't do anything because you really can't call the bond because there's really not enough money there, and then you can't do anything about it. It takes too long to leave. Why do we bother? Just ignore it.
Well, but it's not that the mechanism doesn't work or can't work. It's whether or not, for example, whether or not this bond is sufficient to do the work, whether or not the bonds need to be higher, and that's something that the council would have to look at in conjunction with the Department of Public Works to try to determine if that's what it would take to resolve it, okay? The process itself works. It's just that this particular case and perhaps some other cases with the amount of the bond, that's what needs to be changed. So,
It's pretty much every case we have.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mr.
but
Doherty.
that's, I think, what you need to look at.
Paul, on this thing, could this work be performed for $14,000?
I don't know.
I mean,
I'd have to look at it more
pretty
closely.
familiar with it, and, you know,
I'm not familiar enough with it to tell you.
okay. I just wonder what the original performance obligation bond was and how it got down to $14,000.
I don't know that either.
Anything
See,
else?
This expires, so we can't table it because it
We just have to
it
extend
would
it.
expire by that time. I would make a motion to go ahead and extend this, but I'd also make part of that motion that staff come back with an explanation on, one, the approximate cost to do this, and number two, what the original performance obligation bond was and how and when was it reduced to $14,000 if the estimated cost to complete this is greater than $14,000.
Mr. Salmons.
Would it be possible for us to get them in here and let them explain why they're not fixing it?
That was my
Sure.
question.
I think that's what we ought to do. We ought to get them in front of us.
Or a letter, send us a
We've been
letter or
asking
something.
that for the last
Yeah.
several planning
Well,
meetings.
maybe not even an in-person, but we should be able to, or the council should be able to demand an explanation of what is going on with the project.
Or what's the
Is that not possible, Mr. Hall?
Well, I don't know that the council would do that, but the
Or the
administration,
administration?
I think the administration can seek to get the answers as to why this isn't being done, whether through our legal department or through the Department of Public Works, but I think we can get an answer as to why they're not moving forward on it.
Well, that was, my other question is that, isn't the sewer company now St. Tammany Parish?
I'm sorry?
Isn't the sewer company now St. Tammany Parish?
I
So
don't know
isn't
the
this,
ans- I don't know that. I don't know. Paul might know. I don't know
Okay.
who the,
because it could be
Who's
Utilities
saying?
Inc. instead of St. Tammany
Tammany
Utilities.
Utilities.
I mean, so in essence, it is our problem. May not have been caused by us, but needs to be fixed by the person that caused the problem.
Yeah.
Ms. Casabon,
I was just gonna make a motion, or second his
don't make a
motion.
motion yet.
To- Well,
Why don't
We already got a motion.
we already have a
well,
motion?
can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to say is that the fact that I summarized that we want a letter, or if they don't show up in person, we want them to respond to at either, you know, to let us know if they have a particular timeline to complete all this. And secondly, like you said, if it's enough, you know, let us know from the engineering or whatever, if this, what amount it would take, whether this is enough or not, but tell us what the exact amount would be, and let them, to me, the longer that they wait on something, I feel like it should be something added to it. I don't care if one is set, the longer, like I said, this is 2009, that, you know, that we add 10% or 20% to it every year, that they're not, that it hadn't, to me, that would be a deterrent, you know, they're gonna get it fixed, because, you know, just laying there dormant and not finishing a project, they don't care. So, or they don't have the means, or give us an explanation as to why and what the status of a project is that goes on this long, and give us some notification.
Well, first you gotta see if they're selling lots. I know you're not supposed to sell the lots, but they could be selling the lots and using the utility lines, and it'll stay dormant forever. The second thing is, I think that we're gonna have to send a resolution to the council, because we find that this to be a problem. And whether they keep the same process of figuring the amount of the bond they gotta put up, but I think what also has gotta be said is that it's a $14,000 bond, or whatever the cost is to fix it. And I
Something.
think that's a catch-all phrase that maybe legal can look at. They can amend our ordinance to say that. So if the 14,000, whatever the bond is set at is not enough and it drags out to this long, then if we gotta fix it, we recover the cost it is to fix it.
You probably can't get a bond written like that, though.
We could,
not gonna be able to get it over.
No. I mean, no bonding company is gonna write a bond for $14,000 or whatever. That's gonna be a problem.
then
But
they're gonna have to fix it
they're
before
gonna
it
have to do
goes to
something.
bond.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something. But, can we not, in every one of these cases that we have like this, require that the owner either gives us a letter or comes here in person to explain why they need an extension and what they're gonna do, rather than this blanket, we just do this over and over and over. I think we ought to find out more about it. And not, you know, you guys are doing the best you can as trying to figure out why they need an extension. But that shouldn't be your job. It should be the owner of this place, whoever it is, to come forward and to explain to us why they need an extension, because they're asking us for an extension. They're not asking you all for an extension.
What would be illegal about talking to the utility company, first of all, to find out if they are taking sewer from them, and if they are, stop them from taking the sewer, which would make them answer the question and fix it. Can we do that? Is there a legal process?
Maybe affecting other people in the area if you do that.
Well, I think
Could
we
be.
can look at, first of all, I think the first thing to do is to try to find out what the holdup is. And, you know, through the legal process, we'll see if we can't get an answer as to why it isn't being done and what our options are to force them to get it done. Okay, so we'll take a look at that from a legal side. We'll also, I heard everything you said, and we'll take a look at whether or not we need to address the amount of the bond, if you will. And we'll take a look at the process of getting these extensions and whether or not the council wants to amend the ordinance to require the developer owner to appear whenever they want an extension of time. So, I've heard everything you said, and I'll bring it to the council's attention, and we'll take a look at the legal issues and see if we can't get this particular one solved.
Do we or can
I'll
we
get an
table
answer.
this
Well,
and wait
at
for
this
an
time,
explanation?
No.
at this
They'll
time,
have to
you-
call it. We don't have time.
You actually have to.
it's gonna have to be extended, and I think
what I
the
said.
ordinance requires at
Okay.
least 6 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And then we'll decide whether or not we're gonna call that performance obligation, because we have the notice timeline that we have to make sure we're in conformity with. So, I've got all the notes, and we'll get an answer on some of these things by the next meeting.
I have a motion to extend. Do I have a second?
I have two questions.
Go ahead, Jay.
Do these consent calendar items go to the council for final acceptance? No. And is this performance obligation of $14,000 on the shoulder of the developer or a surety company? Or do we even know?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to look at the bond.
It's a surety company. Yeah.
But we don't know.
Dave, anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna amend my motion, to include getting response, from Covington
Cottages.
Place Cottages LLC, when the staff comes back next month with the report as to, the approximate cost of, all this and everything.
All right, I got
I'll
it.
second the amended motion.
Okay. Please vote on the motion.
Emil, did
Motion.
did they used to have to come before we went to the consent calendar? I can't remember. They didn't?
No, ma'am.
I couldn't
They never
remember
did
that.
have to
If we
appear.
did this, them not
Actually,
showing.
You really don't have to appear in any case as long as you pay your fee.
Yeah, but I thought we had more people here explaining that
You
it
had
seemed
more
like.
cases, that's why you had more.
That
people.
must be why we went to the consent calendar, yeah.
Yes. All right, minor subdivisions, MS 12-01-001, 189.11 acre tract of land being Lot 7A into Lots 7A1, 7A2, and 7A3. It's Ward 1, District 1. The developer and the owner is Allstate Financial Company. John E. Bono and Associates are the engineer, and it's in Mr. Dean's district. Any opposition? Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item was pulled from the agenda because a waiver of the regulations is required. Proposed parcel 7A3, if you look at a copy of the survey attached to your staff report, it does not meet the minimum lot size requirement of 1 acre pursuant to code. The owner is proposing to create 3 smaller parcels out of 1 larger parcel, which was 7A, that was part of a former minor subdivision, MS 10-04-010. Said larger parcel is 189.11 acres in size, and the owner requests that the commission approve the division of said parcel into a 186.53 acre tract, a 1.79 acre tract, and a 0.79 acre tract respectively. All lots have public road frontage. However, the proposed 0.79 acre tract, 7A3, as I indicated, does not meet the minimum standard for lot size, which is 1 acre. But it should be noted that the parcel is zoned commercial, which under the zoning classification does permit a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, which is basically about a little over a quarter of an acre in size, about 0.46 acres.
Mr. Barone?
Thank you, Mr. Lombard, members of the commission. Paul Marone on behalf of the Wayner family and Allstate Financial Company. The request before you this evening is really the result of a situation that somewhat falls between the existing subdivision regulations for the parish. And what I mean by that is that there really are perhaps 2 methods by which we could make our request. One is the request that is before you tonight, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The other way would be to come to you with a full-blown tentative, preliminary, and final plat. And ultimately, I think we end up at the same place. But because of the minimal nature of what we're doing, in other words, we're really creating two new tracks. The third is the remainder track, which is still almost a 200-acre track, but we're creating two parcels. They have existing road frontage, no utility or no infrastructure whatsoever needs to be constructed. So we really felt like it was a better method to come to you under the minor subdivision regulation, have a public hearing. If there is opposition, there's an opportunity for those to voice that opposition, but get it before this body, and we believe this is the most expeditious way of achieving what we want. You'll recall that some years ago, the parish ordinances or the parish subdivision ordinance was modified. We used to have the subdivision ordinance that provided tentative, preliminary, and final, but we also had some exemption provisions in there. Those exemption provisions went away as part of the minor subdivision portion coming in. And so again, what you have is this is a situation that falls somewhat in between those, and that's why we're here tonight requesting the waiver. As I said, we're really creating two new parcels. The purpose of those parcels is to fulfill two contracts that are in place, one for Resource Bank Operations Center, and the other is for a physical therapy office. Both of the contracts are in place on these parcels. Closings are prepared to take place as soon as this process is completed. So from a sales standpoint, the owner is very anxious to move forward with those. This area, while many of the other areas in the parish have experienced slowdown, and this area has too, the slowdown here has not been quite as great, and this has really been an engine of commerce that has continued to move along, though admittedly at a much slower pace than it used to. So we would like to keep that going, and we would like the opportunity to move forward and make the sales that I mentioned to you. I would note that 2 points with regards to these parcels, and staff hit on both. Mr. Keller hit on both in his comments. The first is that though we are requesting a waiver on the lot size, it is not a waiver on the lot size under the existing zoning, which I think is significant. The lot sizes, the parcels that we have set out here, meet the zoning. We're in full compliance with our existing zoning. The waiver is only as to the minor subdivision ordinance. Now, with regards to the minor subdivision ordinance, it requires 1 acre, okay? Therein lies the request this evening. But I would point out to you that these two lots that we are creating exceed 2 acres. So if we look at them globally, they exceed what the minimum would be. It's just our dividing line between them is such that one of the parcels in compliance with zoning falls outside of the minor subdivision ordinance stipulation. So that's a long-winded explanation of where we are and why we're requesting the waiver this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have, but we would respectfully request your approval, allowing the re-subdivision and creating of the lot set forth on the Bono plat.
I asked for opposition. I didn't see any hands. I'll ask again if there's any opposition. Okay. Let me ask the obvious question. To me, it's obvious. Why don't you take, on that lot that's almost 8/100 of an acre, make it a little bit longer to make it a full acre?
Well, the lot sizes were actually dictated by the uses that I mentioned. And we have existing users with existing prices and dimensions for their projects that necessitated the .79 and the 1.78. That was something.
What happens if you would sell a guy 1 acre instead of .79? He's still going to put his use there. He's just got a little bit bigger piece of property to make it all in conformity. That's correct, but the larger parcel then does affect the price and the other parameters of the contract. So those were factors that we looked at in trying to figure out how best to accomplish what we were trying to do here. I just don't see us being in the pricing business or the real estate business to justify changing this because of pricing or because of a sliver of land that you don't want to sell. I mean, it's not that you don't have it's not like if this was something that was landlocked by other properties that you didn't own, I'd say, it makes sense to me.
Right.
But when you own 180 acres next to it, that you could take and put that little division of land, 2/10 of an acre on it, it just doesn't give me the assurance that that's the reason.
And I understand your concern. I would point out two things. Remember, we're really talking about not lot size. I mean, we're talking about lot size, but the issue is process. Because lot size really becomes part of the zoning. And the zoning allows a smaller lot than we're proposing. And so if there's an objection tonight, it really, at its core, is not the lot size, but it's the process. Because, you see, we could go another process with 3 different plats and end up at the same place and be in compliance. So I understand your concern and the reluctance for the commission, in any case, to consider factors that really get outside of what you do, which is really in the private domain, and I think Mr. Lombard makes a good point, that you're not in the position of making decisions based on what the private landowner is dealing with, and I respect that. I guess I would go back to my point about the process, and I think that there's 2 methods to do this: a waiver under the minor subdivision with lot sizes that are in compliance with zoning, or proceeding through creating additional plats that ends up at the very same place.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I understand where you're trying to get to. But previously, your reason for doing this is time. So if you go the long way, I don't know if you'll make the time frame to do it.
That is a problem.
Whereas if you go our way and not make us create another rule just for this one piece of land, even though you meet the qualifications of it, it makes it easier on this commission in the next instance to come along and says, well, I'm missing it by half an acre, and I'm pressed for time, and I need to do it.
Right.
I'm not arguing with you.
No, and I respect your position
I'm
on
just
that.
showing you from our perspective. And
Right.
let me see if anybody else, Mr. Salmons, Mr.
Yeah, I'm just curious why, I realize you chose it for shortness of time or whatever, but, you know, I can just see this 6 months from now, and then you got two more lots you're gonna create, and you're gonna go through the same minor subdivision review, and here we are again. And so, you know, to me, you need to think about, you know, how you're gonna develop your property.
Right.
And do it the right way to begin with, rather than having to keep coming back to us all the time doing waivers. So,
Right.
that's my point.
And that's a good point, and obviously with the remaining parcel, the 186 acres, there is a master plan that is in place that ultimately may come before you that we're refining. Now, we're a long way off from that, as I said. There has been some activity in this area, but nowhere near justifying putting all of the infrastructure in to develop a 180 some odd acre tract. But your point is well taken. With regards to these parcels, obviously these would not come back before you. There could be any further re-subdivision of these 2 parcels. The remaining mother tract, of course, it's 180. There could be.
And so if you come back in another 6 months and do 2 more, we're gonna start getting a little antsy about doing waivers.
I understand.
You understand that?
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
Mr. Delahoosie.
Just because my plat and the vicinity map is very, very blurry that I have, I see that it's the interstate, and I think I make out Oxnard, but can you kind of give me a little bit better orientation of where this particular piece is? It fronts the interstate, is that right?
It does not, well, yes.
Portion of it does.
A portion of
Right.
the remainder tract does. That's correct. As you come down Oshner Boulevard, you'll pass Log and you'll pass the Oshner facility on your left, and you'll go around the curve. As you come around the curve, the property is by and large to your left, and it continues as you go up the new Oshner Boulevard. It wraps around the existing Utilities, Inc. of Louisiana pond out there, and then fronts I-12.
Okay.
The 2 smaller parcels abut the parcel that y'all have looked at several months ago for the relocation of Forest Manor.
Okay. So right now, the existing zoning of the entire tract of land, which is the 189.1111, is PBC 2.
I believe that is correct, yes.
So I don't understand then the comment about that, you know, the 0.79 acre parcel does not meet the minimum standard lot size, blah, blah, blah. But it should be noted that the parcel is zoned commercial, which under the zoning classification permits a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet or 0.46 acres. So is it commercial or is it PBC?
Let Mr. Keller
Well,
maybe.
that's what it is. It's a planned business center district. It's
Which
a
you're just
commercial district.
labeling
Yeah,
commercial.
it's a commercial district.
So it does truly fall underneath that allows for a smaller lot size?
Yes, 20,000 square feet under the zoning. So if they were to come in and do a typical tentative, preliminary, and final, they would comply with the zoning requirements for that district, but they're going through minor subdivision, which has a higher standard
I
of
got
1
you.
acre
So
minimum.
that's why you're pointing that out to
Yes,
us only?
yes.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I think we go back to the process, which is what Mr. Marone is saying, and, you know, I know we're not in the real estate business, but the fact of the matter is he could come back through a different way and presumably get what it is he's asking for.
Or he could take and extend the rear lot line 20 or 30 feet, whatever the number is, to make it work.
Which then he wouldn't even need to be here, right? You wouldn't even need a minor
correct.
subdivision approval,
It would have
period.
been done administratively.
Would have been
Correct.
done administratively, right.
You want to do
So-
it the
Way
quick way?
everything would have been,
I mean, I hear you. I'm just,
Right.
I mean, obviously, that's not an option and something you all are willing to
That's
flex
right.
on.
The owner's not able to do that, unfortunately. Otherwise, we wouldn't be burdening you this evening with it.
Mr. Matthews.
Well, it just seems like for 2/10 of an acre, you're having to come here tonight. Had you increased the size of that one lot 2/10 of an acre, you could have done this administratively. This would have been over and done weeks ago. You can go the long way, but of course, that's much more time consuming
Right.
and of course, much more expensive. You've got to have plats drawn and, so it's, what's the value of 2/10 of an acre? Is it more or less than having to go the long way around? It just seems like if you'd, 2/10 of an acre would have been so much smarter to do, and you wouldn't be here. This had been done.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, Paul, I only have one concern.
Yes, sir.
With, if this was granted for .79 acre tracts, and you're saying that one of the areas is gonna be used for a bank and the other one's for a physical therapist or something like this? And obviously, these two businesses will be on Oshner Boulevard,
Correct.
is it correct? If this were to continue to keep happening, where we'd have to, downgrade the amount of spacing that we're granting for this, you'd have a lot more points of egress into the Oshner Boulevard, wouldn't you? You'd have two going into the physical therapy, one going in, one coming out, one going into the bank, and one coming out. So wouldn't you automatically start having these points so close to each other that people couldn't turn properly? You understand there's reasons to have the size, so you won't have so many points of interest. I mean, like with this case here, you could have like one point of the bank coming in and then coming out through the physical therapist. You know what I'm saying is, especially around the curve. So if we keep granting this smaller than amount of area, you're putting those points a little closer together.
Right, I guess I do understand what you're saying. I guess, to me, the issue of the size of the lots as it relates to the uses on the site, I guess is more of a zoning issue. And I mean, again, those issues would be there whether we took the long way around, whether we extended back a few feet to pick up that additional footage. I mean, those issues would still be there. But certainly, let me say that, I mean, we want to make sure that, that the ingress and egress out of these sites meets the parish requirements and is safe. And so, I mean, in that regard, that is something that we're interested in. And that's something that is looked at very closely at the building permit stage, but also as the developer of the site has restrictions there that mandate certain links between curb cuts.
Yeah, but see, you're trying to mix zoning and planning at the same time, it seems like to me. This is a planning issue, I think, not a zoning issue. We're at a
Well,
planning meeting.
this is a planning meeting,
So,
and,
I mean, you're trying to plan these things.
Right.
Right now, you're coming in to ask us to waiver this, right?
Right.
What would happen if you came in with some property that you also additionally own on Oshner Boulevard and request to do the same thing again? Just like one of the other commissioners was talking about.
Let me make this clear, though.
Yeah.
Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm remembering the ordinance correctly. This is one large parcel of property, and they're using a minor subdivision to create 3 lots, the large one and the 2 small ones, right?
Correct.
So I
Out of
don't,
an existing minor subdivision, yes. They're taking one of those parcels from a former minor subdivision and creating a new one, yes.
okay, but at this point, under the current ordinance, we're creating 3 out of one original parcel, so they can't come back through the minor subdivision process again once you created this one.
As long, they can come back and with the residual larger parcel that they're gonna have, they can come back with that and create another minor subdivision, yes.
I don't think, I'd have to
I
look
believe
at
they
the
can.
we couldn't as to the smaller lots, but
Yeah.
No,
It
but
requires
with
a
the
public, it requires a public hearing, but they can do that.
Well, I'd have to look at the ordinance, but my recollection is, once you did the minor subdivision process once, you can't use it again. That's my recollection of the ordinance, but it could be, we amended
I'll
it
have to
several
research that.
times, but,
Right.
Well, if that's the case, is that not what they're doing today?
No, but
There
this
was
would-
already,
this
this
this would have been a prior, before the current version of the minor subdivision was created.
okay, I mean, is that a fact?
Yeah, the ordinance has been amended several times, but it's
Yeah.
my understanding that the ordinance still allows for people to take lots within an existing minor subdivision and create another minor subdivision, however, it requires a public hearing process and review. But like I say, Neil said, we'll have to look at the ordinance and see exactly if it says that. I think it does, but, we'll
Okay,
have to look
but
at it.
if it doesn't, we need to look at when the original minor subdivision
Sure,
was created for this piece of property,
sure.
because
That
then,
was created in 2010. We're out of a larger parcel. It was created, three large parcels were
Right.
created back in 2010, and now they're taking one of those big, large parcels and making
Okay,
it
so-
smaller.
Neil, if you're right, then they can't be here doing this.
no, not only if in fact the new language says that you can't re-subdivide, which I don't think it does, but I could be mistaken too. That amendment, though, I don't believe that amendment would be retroactive. So if the original minor subdivision was done prior to the new amendment, then I think we could still avail ourselves. We couldn't re-subdivide it further if this is approved, and Mr. Hall's
But
analysis is
that's the
correct.
question. When was this re-subdivided into the original minor subdivision? And when did the ordinance, if in fact it is the way Neil thinks it is, when did that happen?
Well, the original, I think, was in 2010, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct, 2010.
And that would have, at that time, I mean, the amendment that Mr. Hall would be talking about, I believe, would be well after 2010. I think it had been sometime last year, I believe.
May have been.
Well, but somebody needs to look at that to make sure that we're not approving something that's already illegal.
Well, Ron,
You want to go ahead and,
answer me an easy question.
you want to go ahead and defer this case till the end of the meeting until Mr. Hall gets an opportunity to look
Let
at
me
the
ask
code?
you a question. He's asking for a waiver, so we gotta have 8 votes?
Got to have 8 votes, correct.
That was,
Can we,
2/3.
can we table this for a few moments?
Yeah, I can
Well,
defer.
Because
it.
Neil is
Yeah.
going to check on it right
Yeah, I think you
now.
can defer it until
And-
Neil gets
and,
back.
yeah.
just give me a motion to defer to the end of the meeting.
Motion to defer till the end of the
Second.
meeting.
Please vote on that motion. Okay. Motion carries. Revocation. A request to build on a buildable substandard lot of record pursuant to section 40-034.01 contiguous lot rule of subdivision regulatory ordinance number 499, located on the west side of US 11, south of Slidell, Louisiana, Ward 9, District 13, The petitioner and the owner is Christy Greco, and it's in Mr. Ortigue's district. Any opposition? Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to Section 40-034.01 of contiguous lot rule ordinance, of subdivision ordinance 499, the Planning Commission is responsible for reviewing all requests for building on buildable substandard lots of record. In this particular case, the applicant is requesting to build on a substandard lot of record in order to construct a single-family residence. In order for the Planning Commission to approve a request for building on a buildable substandard lot of record, the applicant must provide proof that he does not currently own and has not sold, nor has any predecessor in title sold any contiguous lots during the period following the initial adoption of the contiguous lot rule ordinance on January 20, 1994. The applicant has satisfied the requisite requirement as referenced to above, and since the applicant is requiring with Parish building setback requirements relative to the construction of a single-family home on the lot in question, the staff has no objections to the proposed request.
Is the petitioner a representative here? Is the petitioner a representative here on this case? Okay. I'll turn it over. I did ask for opposition. I didn't see any hands, and the petitioner's not here. So, Mr. Doherty.
Well, I hate to move forward on something when the petitioner's not here. I am familiar with this. My concern would be the amount of parking, but since this is gonna be a residence, I believe is the way I understand it, and not a commercial entity, which we've had problems with on this section of Highway 11 with parking along the highway, et cetera. I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve, provided that there will be no parking on the shoulder of Highway 11.
No parking in the state right-of-way?
That's correct.
There's a difference on the shoulder and the state right-of-way,
Well,
because that state right-of-way varies on Pontchartrain Boulevard up in that area.
Okay, no parking in the state right-of-way then.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Matthews?
Well, I again feel like if the petitioner does not even care enough to come plead his case, I'm very reluctant to vote for it. I don't think we ought to be doing that.
Just to let you know, I did talk to the petitioner who said that he was out of town and he was planning on making the meeting, so maybe he just didn't get back in time.
And it's a residence, so.
Yeah, but he does have a 25-foot setback also on his property line to his building, so he should have enough room to park on his
Right,
property.
yeah.
It shouldn't be a problem.
All right, vote on a motion. Mr. Willie, Mr. Simons, Delahousie, Mackey.
That's everybody. This one, 7 yeas and 1 nay.
I'll vote with the majority, and it'll make it 8 votes, so that'll approve it. That'll go for the,
Yeah,
So motion it.
yeah, a waiver's not required for this, so.
oh, it isn't?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay. Revocation 12-01-001, revocation of a portion of Major Lane, Ward 3, District 3. Applicant is One Consort International LLC. The surveyor is John G. Cummings and Associates, and it's in Mr. Thompson's district. Any opposition? Staff?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, at the last month's meeting, you approved a final subdivision for Lake Ramsey Phase 4A. This is related to that. If you remember, Major Lane encroached upon Lake Ramsey, or Ramsey Court, which they wanted to extend. And this is the formal process to go ahead and revocate that portion and to assimilate it into Major Lane, into Ramsey Court. The applicant is proposing to revoke a small portion of the easternmost end of Major Lane that terminates in a cul-de-sac. The purpose of the request is to assimilate said part of the Major Lane right-of-way into Ramsey Court, which will extend in a north-south direction to provide access to Phase 4A, addition to Lake Ramsey subdivision, as well as for future phases. The applicant, the councilman, and the area for the area and the staff have all been working together in order to move this proposal forward. The following conditions have been established in order for the parish to support said proposal. A, A private gate shall be established at the connection between Major Lane and Ramsey Court. Said gate shall be locked and opened only in the case of emergencies. A key to the gate shall be provided to the Lake Ramsey Homeowners Association. B, the applicant shall be responsible for the drainage at the end of Major Lane to ensure that it will not be adversely affected by the revocation. C, the applicant shall provide an aggregate roadway surface acceptable to the parish that will connect Major Lane to Ramsey Court. And D, since the portion of Major Lane being revoked will be utilized and rededicated as a part of Ramsey Court, and improvements will be provided by the applicant as mentioned above, the applicant will not have to pay for the land being revoked.
All right, representative is here, or the petitioner? I know they're not here, so. Ms. Casabon?
Yes, this is, has been worked out between the homeowners and, the staff. I commend y'all for.
Our zoning was conditioned on this being
Yeah.
done at this meeting.
Yeah, that's, yeah, before they were to do this, so I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. Willie. Please vote on the motion. Motion carries. You ready? Yeah. All right, let's have a motion to bring up MS 12-01-001.
So moved.
Have a motion, I have a second. Please vote on that motion. Yes, that motion does carry. Okay, we're back up with Allstate Financial on every subdivision. Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, the provision that I was talking about, I'll read to you. It's in D3. When the minor subdivision of an original parcel of property to create 5 or less lots has received minor subdivision approval under the provisions of this section as amended hereby, or under the provisions of this section as it existed prior to the effective date of this ordinance, no further subdivision of the original parcel or any of the lots created by the minor subdivision of the original parcel will be allowed unless approved by the Planning Commission. So basically what this says is you can't use the administrative process more than once, but you can use the minor subdivision as long as you do it before the Planning Commission.
Which I think's what.
Okay, so we can work on it, we can approve it at this meeting.
Yeah.
So, they can do it in the future again.
Right.
That is correct.
As long as they come back here.
But we
Long
would
as
have to come back for a
They come
public
back and
hearing.
see us. So now the decision is, do we approve it or do we don't approve it? And if we approve it, we gotta have 8 votes because it is a variance. Am I correct, Ron?
That's correct, need 8 votes.
Okay. Mr. Delahousie?
Well, I think the opposite could be thought of and said that since we're just talking about 2/10 of an acre, I'm inclined to go ahead and make a motion to approve, but I'll tell you, if they were to come back and want to further subdivide the 180 acres, I'd be very reluctant. I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. I have a second by Mr. Doherty. Any discussion?
Just
Mr.
got one
Matthews?
question. Paul,
Yes, sir.
with the current motion and the statement behind it, do you think your client is going to want to not further subdivide that 180 acres?
I think he's going to. I made a note of Mr. Mr. Delahousie's comments and some of the other comments, Mr. Salmon's, that kind of echoed a similar sentiment. And so that'll be conveyed to my client. And as I said, the remainder track, there is a master plan that is in the process being worked on that would come before you in a more traditional sense rather than through the minor subdivision ordinance.
Well, and I guess it's my point that master plan, no master plan, you're talking about a huge piece of property, and hopefully you can be a little bit more proactive with your approach of future uses of this land that would allow you to come through a different process other than the minor subdivision
Right.
review. But when it comes to variances in the future on this particular parcel, I'm just speaking for myself, that I would be a little reluctant to go ahead and do something, you know, that wouldn't fall within the acre or better, where you wouldn't even have to come through this process.
And I think that similar goes for several of us. So you may get what you want and find out it really wasn't what you wanted in the long run. You know, it's
Right.
gotta be careful what you ask for.
I understand.
Please vote on the motion. Motion carries, 8 votes. Tentative subdivision review, SD 11-11-005, Coquille Phase 2 Revised, Ward 1, District 1. The developer and the owner is Forest Lake Estates LLC. The engineer is Kelly McHugh and Associates Incorporated, and it's in Mr. Dean's district. And this case was tabled at our December 13th meeting. And I've got a letter here saying that the above referenced subdivision was tabled last month and would like to request this to continue to be tabled at this time. Am I correct, Ron?
That's correct.
Is he just gonna table it for 30 days or table it indefinitely?
Not indefinitely. We typically will allow them to carry it on the agenda 3 times. If they ask for a 4th tabling, we just recommend an indefinite tabling at that point. They say they're almost ready to go, so give them 1 more month.
Any opposition to this case? No opposition.
Motion to table.
Move the table.
I have a motion to table. I have a second. Please vote on that motion.
We may have already received them, Ron, but do we have plans on this particular project? Because I don't have copies.
Because it was tabled from last month, usually we
Carry 'em over.
refer to the carryover, yeah, the
Okay,
plats.
thanks.
SD 11-11-005, Phase 2, Coquille Phase 2 Revised, Ward 1, District 1. The developer and owner is Forest Lake Estates LLC. Engineer is Kelly McHugh and Associates in Mr. Dean's district, and this was tabled at the December 13th meeting. And the developer requests tabling again. Am I correct?
Yes, sir, exact same case. Yeah, they're here in tentative and preliminary at the same time.
I have a
Second.
motion. I have a second. Please vote on that motion. Motion carries. Final subdivision review, Grand Oaks Phase 1A, Ward 1, District 1. The developer and the owner is Trinity Developers. Is Kelly McHugh and Associates of the engineers. It's in Mr. Dean's district. Any opposition? Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on December 19, 2011. The inspection disclosed that all asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders need to be constructed, roadside ditches are functioning, and detention ponds are constructed. The following uncompleted items exist at the time of final inspection. Need engineers' periodic inspection reports, need base test results, need asphalt test results, need speed limit signs, need blue reflectors. As-built drawings need to be revised to show 4 inches of asphalt on roadways, actual base that was constructed, and as-built elevations of pond. Subdivision plat needs to be revised to show 4 inches asphalt on roadway, actual base that was constructed, and 911 addresses on each lot and developer's signature. An as-built signage drawing is needed. Should the planning commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required. The amount of $38,500 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. Mandatory developmental fees are $92,310 total. Fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed. Department of Environmental Services has comments.
A negative bacteriological report relative to the construction of the project's water system has not been issued by DHH as required. A letter of acceptance of and responsibility for the perpetual maintenance and operation of the water and sewer system has not been issued by the utility provider as required. Staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed.
Mr. Morone.
Mr. Lombard, members of the commission, Paul Marone, on behalf of Trinity Developers, a more traditional case before you now.
Well,
Final
it start out
subdivision.
that way.
Um,
Go ahead.
That's right. The staff comments, per the staff comments, the inspection on December 19th was conducted. Since then, with regards to the roadside shoulders, they have been constructed. So all of the construction activities with regards to the infrastructure for the roads, drainage, sewer and water are in. The as-built have been delivered to environmental services and to engineering. In talking to my client just before the meeting, I understand that the periodic inspection reports, the base test results, and the asphalt results also have been received and have been submitted. The signage and the blue reflectors have been purchased. We have them. They have not yet been put up. There was some grading as a result of natural gas line installation that needed to be done before the signs could be put up, lest we would have had damage to the signs. So those are in. Those will be up very shortly. And of course, the last thing we typically do once everybody else is done is we put the blue reflectors down so that they don't get damaged in the process. So both of those items will be in very quickly. As far as the negative bacteriological report and the letter of acceptance, the utilities for this development are being serviced through the Gust Island facility. So there's a sub-regional facility that this is being pumped to. Mr. McHugh is, of course, in charge of that, and that letter of acceptance can be issued as soon as we get DHH approval on the bacteriological report. So all of these items are well in hand, and I don't see any significant delays in any of them. And with that said, we would request approval, subject to the items being satisfied to staff's acceptance and ultimately the plats being filed.
Mr. Davis.
I'll make a motion to approve it. There's no waiver.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? Mr. Delahousie.
No, just second it.
Okay. Please vote on the motion. Hard group tonight, Paul.
I'm telling you, it's a tough crowd. Thank you.
Motion carries. Old business, Ash subdivision 06-05-016, filing 1, Ashton Park, filing 1, Part 1, Ward 8, District 8. Developer and the owner is Azalea Lake Partnerships, the engineer is Wink Companies LLC, and it's in Chris Canyolet's district, and this is a request to amend the restrictive covenant number 9 on the final subdivision plat. Staff, your comments.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and read the letter that I sent to the commission December 28, 2011 into the record. Dear Commissioners, the developer, owner of the above captioned subdivision, whom still controls a majority interest in the homeowners association, is requesting that the Planning Commission permit an amendment to restrictive covenant number 9 on the final subdivision plat in order to provide relief for driveway setbacks on lots of less than 90 feet in width. Again, as you can see, a copy of the letter from the developer attached to my letter. Currently, said restrictive covenant on the subdivision plat requires that driveways on all corner lots must not be located any closer than 60 feet from the corner of the property where two streets intersect. This requirement is applied typically to lots that have at least 90-foot widths and which are not typically in PUD developments. All of the lots in filing 1, Part 1 of Ashton Park, which is in a PUD, are under 90-foot widths. Therefore, the staff believes the developer's request is justified in this case, and therefore it should be allowed to amend restrictive covenant number 9, applying a 35-foot setback, which is the planning department's policy relative to lots under 90 feet in width. Therefore, restrictive covenant number 9 should be amended pursuant to an act of amendment to the final subdivision plat to read as follows. Driveways on corner lots shall not be located closer than 35 feet from the property corner where two streets intersect.
Mr. McElroy. I ask for opposition. I didn't see any hands.
Good evening, I'm Pat McElroy with the Azalea Lakes Partnership, and we are the developer of Ashton Park, and we concur with the letter that Ron just read to you guys.
Okay, let me turn it over. Mr. Matthews.
Just, this is a safety issue, so that you won't have cars coming around a curve and hitting people as they come out of the driveway. How wide are these lots that we're dealing with? If they're 89 feet, then it's not a big problem.
Thank you, that's a good question. They're typically 75 feet.
Okay, so.
Here's what we
We
got.
could have a whole lot less than a 35-foot, a whole lot more than a 35-foot waiver, and still give you a place to put your driveways, couldn't we?
Well, what we're experiencing with a home builder that we certainly recruited is the 35 feet would be the absolute minimum that he can have his driveway positioned because of the width of the house. Remember, on the corner lot, we have to step back 15 feet off the corner in addition to 5 feet on the other side. So that maxes me out.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second by Mr. Delahousie. Any discussion? Please vote on the motion. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McElroy.
Thank you all very much. Y'all have a good evening.
Same to you, sir. Entering the parish right-of-way resolution number 10-011, Ward 9, District 11, the relocation of Fenner Ditch in the vicinity of Bayou Liberty. The debtor is Tam Jeff Limited, and it's in Mr. Stefanski's district. Any opposition? Staff?
Reference is made to our letter dated January 3rd, 2012, regarding an extension of time for the above-captioned project, which is scheduled for action at the January 10th, 2012 meeting. In addition to the time extension, the petitioner, by letter from his engineer, proposes to eliminate paragraphs 9 and 10 and revise paragraphs 6 and 13 of resolution number 1011. Copies attached, provided that an adequate drainage and access servitude is furnished to the parish on the petitioner's adjacent property to be used by the parish for future maintenance of the area drainage outfall ditch. This proposal has been reviewed and is acceptable, since the change will create maintenance access to a very much needed outfall ditch. Therefore, it is recommended that paragraphs 9 and 10 be eliminated and revise paragraphs 6 and 13 in accordance with the petitioner's engineer's letters dated January 5th, 2012 from resolution 1011, and that the $20,000 performance obligation not be released until the drainage and access servitude is furnished to the parish. To give you a little bit of an update from this letter, later in the day today, they contacted us and pointed out that where they were talking about dedicating an easement to us is actually within the city limits of Slidell. So they're now proposing to dedicate that drainage right-of-way to the city of Slidell, and we said, oh, that conceptually we're okay with that idea, but they would need to still put up the performance obligation for us to hold until we see that that's been done.
Will the city of Slidell give us use of that right-of-way? Servitude?
Well, if the city takes it, they would be the one to maintain it, and we own part of the property where this ditch is to be installed, so we would already own and be able to maintain what's on our property.
Okay, and they'll maintain what's on theirs. Mr. Mackey?
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second by Mr. Doherty. Any discussion? Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, me again. Yeah, me again.
Imagine that.
We didn't have any of this in our original package. Did we just get this? Because I'm trying to look at this and hurriedly, and I'm lost.
It was not on the draft. It's on the final one.
Well, I understand that. We've just got the final one
Hour ago.
about an hour ago. And I don't have a clue what's going on. I mean, I hate approving stuff that we don't have a clue. It's just,
Ron,
again,
why
not
don't
a
you,
heck of a way to run an airline.
Yeah, things progressed throughout today where things changed. I will hand out to just show you the two properties. I'll hand this out to everybody and you can take a look at it.
So basically what we're trying to do is we want to extend the performance obligation because he needs to dedicate this right away. Is that some of it?
More or less, yeah.
More or less, which one?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, we're holding on to the performance obligation until he demonstrates that he's dedicated a right-of-way to the city to maintain the new drainage way that's been created.
And that will clear everything that needs to be done for the subdivision, and we can then release the performance obligation.
That'll give the drainage they requested, and we can release performance obligation, yes.
Okay? I'd just like to know what I'm doing.
Paul, how long is that gonna take them to dedicate that?
I don't know how long the city takes to accept easements. I don't know what their process is.
Okay.
All right, do I have a motion? I have a second. Please vote on the motion. Motion carries. Any old business? Any new business? I see some people sitting here. Did we miss a case you were here on? Okay. Not a problem. Thank y'all for coming. Motion to adjourn? So moved.